to the wisdom flow. Revenue ramp, let's go, let's go. Let's go, let's go.
Hey Rahul, welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for being here. Uh, like you have had a incredible journey in sales with Blue and a lot of other ventures that you have done in sales industry, right? You have had like School of SDR, Sales Fin podcast, and have worked with big names in the industries as well, right? Uh, so like I pretty much know you have gone through everything, right? But for the folks who don't know you, probably a brief intro would be helpful there.
Sure. Thanks, Ashutosh, for having me, first of all. It's a pleasure to be here. I think I'm doing this podcast after a very long time. I haven't done even some of my podcasts for a long time. But yeah, it's always excited to be on the other side. Yeah, for a change. It really is great. About me, I've had a quite bit of a journey. I probably had the first mover advantage, I might say. I started as a B2B SDR before it was like a big thing. And at that time, of course, there were different sort of challenges. Yeah, so today I am the co-founder of School of SDR, and chief growth officer of Blue. And I also run a podcast and I do a bunch of other things. I love working. I think working gives me a lot of energy. I don't have any intentions ever retire. I don't know. And when the time comes, I don't have any plans as such. I have not planned that I want to retire by this age like people do. I think I kind of draw all my, the way I live. I think work just gives me that fuel every day. Yeah.
It makes sense. Makes sense. Yep. I think I've seen you working, and then we briefly worked together in Slintel as well, right? And a lot of things you have been doing in the sales function and with the sales folks, right? So would like to like understand like what was the initial inspiration while you were getting started with Blue, and like how actually did it happen, and what was the opportunity? How did you decided that you want to build a AI communication coach of sort, right? So probably any lights on that.
Sure. So I think before we do that, I think we'll have to go probably, I don't know, 11, 12 years ago. I used to be a
Okay.
coach. I used to be a trainer back at American Express. I used to be a process trainer where I used to coach customer care representatives. I was a customer care rep myself at American Express, and that's where I got most of my coaching. Coaching was always dear to my heart, and there was an operational side in American Express. There was a training side. At that time, as much as it hurts today to the society we have today, most of the women were more inclined to training than men, because men were more inclined towards operational side because that's where you're driving more results. But at American Express, training was like a vital part of the overall operation. It used to take 3 months for someone to get certified, because 1 month of process training, 15 days of voice and accent, and then 45 days of OJT on the job training. So it used to take 3 months for a customer care rep to be ready just to answer the phone,
Oh,
and so that you can tell somebody a credit card balance and whatnot. And that's one of the things which I keep talking about. We don't train sales reps enough. If customer care rep, 3 month training, we are expecting sales reps to do this in 15 days. Anyway, so I was an auxiliary trainer back then at American Express. I trained about 100 odd, customer care reps at that time. That was always a thing in me that, I wanted to be in coaching. I think sales just kind of happened. And then when I joined in sales, I realized, oh my God, there's no one to coach me. In my first role, I was given a set of trainings which were all recorded, and I realized they were good because I was learning this for the first time. However, I did not have a way to get trained. So I like to draw a conclusion here. So while I had the training, I still could not be trained, because all I had was the information. All I had was the information that you go and apply. But if I apply, what mistakes can I make? And there was no one to coach me. I had bosses, I had peers, but I strongly feel that, just because you're a pro player, you cannot be a good coach. So I'll give you an
oh,
example of Messi. There was a article recently I read where somebody said Messi, despite being the number one player in the world, he cannot be a great coach, because coaching requires a different set of abilities, different set of skill set. right? And I think the advantage I've always had is I've had great bosses, I've had great companies where companies were more than willing to spend on either my training or said, you know what, you figure it out, or you find out a trainer and we'll train you. Okay. And that's something which I experienced at WhatFix, I experienced at Slintel, any company I went to. And I also had this in me when I also wanted training. I also wanted to be coached, despite the fact I had some experience or no experience. So when I approached all my bosses, I always had, I always got the inspiration. I always got the backing that, hey, you do whatever you think is best and we'll support you. So that from there, I think, so if you see, this has always been there that I wanted to be a coach. And that's the reason I think I got into the SDR training, as I became an SDR manager instead of going to that operational side of becoming an AE and supporting the team there. That this kind of happened. And I think I would like to definitely dedicate this to one of my boss, who supported me in the SDR manager journey, Vipul from WhatFix. I had Kadim who said, Rahul, I think this is something which really speaks to you. I can see you're passionate about it. And I think what you should do is you should go deep and then you should go wide. And I think that's what I did in the last few years. So while doing this, again, I think it was natural for me to make all these transitions, starting School of SDR, where we have trained 355 SDRs, working with different companies. And of course, the idea was not mine. It was my co-founders, Maruti, who was initially running it. And I kind of took it forward from there. And again, the next natural step was when we realized we were trying to scale School of SDR. We always thought that there was always a hurdle that if I have 15 students, I can only practice mock calls, or I can only practice with them, and I only have so much opportunity. We all have limited time, right? And if I have 15 students and if I have to coach every student, let's say for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, all my time is gone. Then we thought, how would we scale this? And then we also talked to number of sales managers, number of SDR managers, VP sales, and all of them had the same problem. It kind of was natural. It kind of was evident that we have to do something. And then AI came in, and hence the Blue was born. Sorry for the long story.
Awesome. No, I think that gives a lot of clarity how it began and how did you start. So, like in Blue, how did you meet your co-founder?
So Maruti and I have known each other for, I don't know, good 6-7 years now. So Maruti used to head sales team at Alma Base. And when they were setting up their first SDR team, they had questions around setting up the commission structure back in the day. Maruti and Kalyan, CEO of Alma Base, came to me to understand how can we set the commission structure for the SDR team. And so I kind of consulted for them for a bit. And then Maruti invited me to School of SDR, which was under a different name earlier, to be a guest. And I was a guest, and then we hit it off. And after that, we were just together. So that's how we got to know each other.
Great. So like you have been working with a lot of people together, right? How do you hire probably your early team members? What do you look for while actually building a team in Blue? What was some things that you kept in mind?
So it's an interesting thing. So interestingly, I have a couple of pointers which I feel anybody can probably pick up and start hiring that ways. But before I do that, I would also like to point out, I think a lot of this has to be intuitive. When you have hired enough people, I think when I look at all the history of all the people I've hired, and I actually maintain a list of all the people I've hired, or even I have assisted other companies to hire, let's say, sales reps, AEs, managers, and whatnot. So there are a few intuitive things which you're able to pick up. There is this body language, but if I were to, let's say, talk about 2 or 3 points, I would say first one is obviously craftsmanship. Do the person know why they want to do a certain things, and do they care about it? Everything can be solved by incentives in sales, especially, but craftsmanship needs to be an innate thing for an individual. Second thing I look for is obviously the growth mindset. Are they open to feedback and coaching to keep growing? I think that's one of the reasons I was hired as an SDR in the first place. So my manager, I had a manager, I had a senior SDR who was both sitting in front of me, and they sent me to a different room and they said, let's do a mock call. I have never done this before. And I go to a different room, they did a mock call with me and they said, let's improve it. Here's our feedback. We did 9 mock calls in a series of 1 hour, And that's how I was progressed to the next round. So the whole idea behind hiring me was obviously because the background with American Express. So I come from the customer care mindset, and then they were looking for, can this person be coached? So when they realized, okay, I can take the feedback and implement it quickly, and that was the key thing for me to get hired. And the last for me is act fast. I think action gives you information. You can analyze the information and make improvement and progress. Another motto I've had always in the past is run before you walk. So if you can quickly act, and I think that's one of my superpower as well. I'm not somebody who is great with ideas. I think I take inspiration from people. I actually have people who work with us who will bring us ideas, and I will execute it. I think execution, I would say, and this is where I would like to draw something which I learned from Setu, who is the CEO of Duri. He came to the podcast and said, idea is a commodity, execution is not. So that's one thing I always remember.
Absolutely. I think that is what is needed while you are doing a startup, right? I think execution, relentless execution. I learned this from Deepak. So he used to tell me that, okay, you should sleep for only 4 hours and then execute, right? I think that was the thought process. So now that AI is here, right? And there has been a SaaS momentum that was going on, and there is a lot of talk about SaaS is dead, so on and so forth, right? And AI is also like the new trend is AI. How you are actually thinking that, okay, Blue will be able to coach people and also stand out in the market and will be able to take over the market, because as SaaS is going, probably there might be some change of play that will happen, right? So how are you thinking and strategizing your sales, your growth? What are some steps you are probably taking to maintain that kind of a growth?
Uh, See, I don't think so. We have cracked the positioning yet because we are obviously early stage, but we are fairly confident we are on the right path. So there are two key aspects that we think about when nailing the positioning. How deeply do we understand customer pain points? I think this is something which has been ingrained in my blood by now, if I might say, because I know when I talk to my family, all they know is that I do something about SDR. That's how much I've talked about it. That's how much, and I have had friends. I still have the screenshots who used to tell me back when I was back when I was at Whatfix, that dude, get out of the SDR thing. You are being tagged as somebody who is an SDR and who you will always remain that. So get out of that. I think it boils down to how deeply you understand, because I think I live, I breathe, I do this on a daily basis. So how deeply you understand the pain points. And second thing we're thinking about nailing the positioning is, how can I make the brand very personable, very a reliable partner to businesses, sales reps. And I think it's very critical as a founder. I need to talk to the customer and always listening. So I do at least 5 interviews every day for 15 minutes with all the users, whether they are signing up today, whether they have signed up earlier and they never return. So I'm pretty sure you know the drill, right? How that happens. So I make it a point that I do 25 interviews every week. So that's 100 for me. And of course, 100 done by other founders and so on. I think where we are spending most of the time is, how can we make sure we understand every intricacy possible? Because in my head, I might be thinking this SDR, let's say, logs into Blue, signs up, but do they know what needs to be done, let's say, after they sign up, like the product journey? Like once they practice a call, what did they feel? Did they feel that wow factor, or did they feel like, oh my God, okay, it was robotic? Or you know what, that's not how humans sound. So these are kind of challenges, of course, we are dealing with Blue. But yeah, that's exactly how we're thinking about positioning.
Makes sense. So I think that is what I wanted to know more about Blue, because like it is majorly like you guys are building a coaching platform for SDRs, right? And doing mock calls, doing other stuff that probably will be able to help. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? So that is what the thought process is, right? So what is the very important thing that probably an SDR should do while actually selling? If you can highlight, probably, because there is a lot of AI that is coming in. What do you think that is there anything that will always be there for an SDR? As in, that is the key thing that you should stick to make good living out of it, and you should not be afraid of the AI coming in, the trends coming in. You should stick to something that is going to be there in the long term.
I think for me, it boils down to two things. One is adaptability. Like, how can
Okay.
you mold yourself? And I mean, if I were to draw I'll probably give you an example. I think you should be either like water or like they say, you should be a chameleon to stay and survive in this world, right? How quickly can you transition? If you think about this, there was a time when for example, when I started, the KPIs of SDR used to be you make 40 calls, you send 40 emails, you send few connection requests and whatnot. Today, if you think about this, there's a product like yours, right, which can actually do all of that. I'm not sure if you do call, but let's say if you do call as well. So what you're saying is, okay, you know what, that we can transition all of that and actually have an AI do it. Now, where would an SDR role fit here? If I think about this,
Right.
I feel there is because AI is in the nascent stage, there's a lot to learn, there's a lot to tweak, right? It's like let's say driving a Ferrari. If you don't know how to drive a Ferrari, or if you don't know how to control the Ferrari will just jump off the cliff. So same thing applies here. I feel while there's a lot of AI tools, while there is, and the tools will simply get to increase. I think one of the things I talk about, and there's a book I read, I remember, I think in my 20s, which was what got you here will not get you there. And that adaptability fits right there, right? There's a skill set which got you here. So let's say, and there are people, there are SDRs who are, let's say, starting their career today. And some of them are probably inspired from, let's say, even a past version of me or past version of anybody who's in sales today. But what got me success yesterday, or let's say 5 years ago, would not probably get you the success today, right? The market is crowded. The market is flooded with AI tools. Companies are claiming that, we can do this. And you're just inundated, right? The tools are just so many. You just don't know what to use. And some of the SDRs, for example, we speak to a lot of them on a daily basis. And we realize that, they are still coming from that mindset that, hey, it will be my company, for example, who will be responsible to train me. If I fail, it's because my company did not train me, or it's because the company did not give leads, right? We all have seen that with sales and marketing fight. Sales blaming marketing, marketing blaming sales. We can play the blame game all day. However, we have to realize that the sooner we realize it's our responsibility. So coming back to your point, like what are some of the things which will not change? Things which will not change is unless you're not continuously adapting, you will probably feel left behind. The same thing would happen with, let's say, Kodak and Nokia's, right? They did not innovate. They did not adapt. Second thing I would say is what is not going to change is caring about the problem. You cared about the problem 100 years ago. You cared about the problem 10 years ago. You cared about the problem today. The way you care about, the way you find those insights have obviously changed. And that the way you find insights will obviously massively change as we grow, right? However, that is one thing I feel you cannot fake it, right? You cannot fake that I care. If you don't care, you don't care. It'll show up in your body language. It'll show up sometime. We all wear masks, and that mask eventually wears off if you're faking it for a long time. So yeah, these two things.
Makes sense. I think this was very good point that if you're faking, if you care, right, it will basically be off someday because your real you will be seen by people. If not today, then tomorrow, probably you'll do like 2 to 3 calls with the prospect. One day they'll be knowing, okay, you're faking it, right? So this is a great advice. Even like while you were starting School of SDRs, right? We got an understanding, okay, you have been in the SDRs industry for a long time, right? So what did you saw, okay, this was the right moment to basically get started with School of SDR? And at the same time, did you saw someone getting value out of it? And like, how did you think I am the person who will be able to like add value there and will be able to like build stuff which will help eventually the SDR? And did you saw, okay, there are things changing in the SDR functions while you were actually on your run for School of SDR?
Okay, good question. So I was running School of SDR in some form of another in a part-time capacity whenever I got time. And that is why I would say it was delayed for a long time. I remember last time I was in the US, my co-founder was asking me if I could do this, if I could, operate this because he was not able to do it. We all had full-time job. It was just impossible for us to do it. And I think, of course, he shared a few success stories with me, like when he trained how he was able to get few people to perform. We had success stories even from the past, like 2-3 years ago, where people saw results in 1 month, like 2x meeting rates, increase in pipeline and whatnot. And I think when I started working together, because I was always closer to working with SDRs, and when I started working together, I mean, we saw all kind of value adds, not just in terms of meeting booked. I think I'll share a couple of stories. So we had one guy who was not able to pay the coaching fee, who was not able to pay the fee, and he had to break his wife's saving, and his wife only had 50,000 approximately in savings, and that was the course fee, right? So he said, I'm taking a big risk by enrolling in the course. And another interesting story is this SDR went to another school. Another school, again, is a good friend of mine. And he said, based on his requirement, based on his times, we can't accommodate. Can you train him? I said, you know what? Thank you for trusting me. Of course, I'll talk to him. We talked to him. He broke his wife's saving, which they were saving probably some special occasion and whatnot. And he brought his entire family and said, you know what? I'm planning to take this risk. And his family, of course, supported him. He got a 75% salary hike when he moved. And that's when we saw, okay, you know what? Sales can change people's lives. And that changed life for me. And I shared this on a podcast like 6 months ago. I think the podcast has not been released yet. But anyways, so I shared this story. Before I came into sales, I think I was miserable. I was financially not really doing well. And I think when I came to sales, my income just doubled on the day one, in the sense, I got from 40,000 to making 10.5 9 years ago. And I remember within 3 months, I did really well, that my wife went on a Dubai shopping trip in 3 months. So that's the kind of story I tell
Nice.
everybody. If you can do that as an SDR, imagine what you can do if you grow in the career. So I think, and then we have more and more stories like that. We had recently somebody who got a 45% hike in the salary. And I think, I'm sure at probably our level, we probably don't think about that. We probably think, okay, you know what, it's not such a big deal. But think about somebody who's, let's say, making 50,000 and all of a sudden they start making 1 lakh and above. There, it's going to be massive value add. And and we all know, what money can do when you're trying to grow. And then I remember I still have the screenshot from this guy. He said, thank you so much. And obviously he talked about how he got 75% hike. And he said, I'm not going to tell my wife, but I'm planning to buy her a diamond ring. So, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, those kind of stories, kind of keeps you going, right? That once you see that there's somebody out there, who's living a better life because of you.
No, absolutely. I think uh, the power of actually coaching and community is that, right? You see people growing around you and you get inspiration from those people. That is basically, I think, and you have been helping out a lot of sales folks. So any particular question that you get every time, probably from a new seller who is just starting their career, is worried? Any particular question that is repeatedly being asked from you?
Huh. I think the primary question everybody has, and I don't think so it has to be related to sales, but I think it'll probably be in any career. Okay, what does the future look like? Okay, and I'm not sure if this is a regional thing, if this is an India thing or a US thing, but in India, I mean, the way we have grown up, we have all relied on astrologers and, horoscopes for all our life, where we all want to know what's going to happen in the future. And I don't think so anybody predicted, let's say COVID, anybody predicted any of the bigger events. We all want that comfort, right? At the end of the day, am I taking the right path? And sometimes we want to listen this from somebody else. Am I taking the right path? And when people ask me, Rahul, is there a future here? I would say, you know what, I'm a living proof that there's a future here. However, does not really mean that you should take the same path. You have to, at the end of the day, decide for yourself. Is that something you see yourself doing? I mean, think about why you're in sales. Are you in for the money? Which is fine if you're in for the money, but you have to then put in the effort to make that money. It can't be that just because you are here. Sales is one profession where I feel you can't grow because of your tenure, right? Like I remember my father worked in a company for 25 years. I think he only got like 2 or 3 promotions, and that was purely based on his tenure and not because of the skills, right? And sales is one profession, where you have to continuously add value. It's a very dynamic career. You don't do it, you get fired.
Makes sense. I think that is the hard truth of sales career actually. And We have seen people getting fired. We have seen a lot of folks, right? So what is the core training principles like you follow in or at School of SDR, and how do you equip students, right, with the skills needed to excel in the sales role? Because now with the changing landscape, there might be principle also changing, right? So it like how you have been adapting, and like what are the core things that still don't change and you train them with?
So, so first thing, I believe that a lot of students who come to us have never been trained, or in some cases have been trained on wrong practices, right? They have been constantly pressured to meet their goals, and for that, they were probably doing the wrong things. So one thing I feel why our students win more than anybody else is because of our faith in the fundamentals. I feel the fundamentals are not going to change a lot. For example, if you think about this, like I talked to you about, how caring for your problems, how caring for your customers' problems is not going to change in the future. It's not that
Makes sense.
customers will stop having problems in the future. So if you think about that, we start our course with the foundation. The first day is all about foundation. Then there's a heavy emphasis on, let's say, cold calling, because I feel uh, unless they're not on the phone, and most of them have actually been on the phone before, but some of them have never picked up the phone. There are companies where they're just resorting to sending, let's say, templates or whatnot. They've never picked up the phone. So what we're trying to do is make them as uncomfortable as they can be during the training. So we give them the hard way. We teach them the hard way. The course is very intensive. It is about 30 hours of training in 1 month with assignments and whatnot combined. So heavy emphasis on training, heavy emphasis on one-on-one mentorship. So it's not like that. It's not an MBA class where I have 50 students and I am not paying attention to each one of them. If I have 15 students, I have 3 mentors, including me. So we all take 5 students each, 1:5 mentor ratio. Sorry, 1:5. And that is how we make sure that there's enough attention. We make a note of every single feedback on a Notion document. We share it with them so that they can see how they're progressing. That gives them the confidence. Oh, you know what? I was here in week 1. Week 2, I'm here. There's a healthy competition which we create. We have a gamification where every week we will announce, okay, you know what? Based on the assignment, class attendance, class engagement, the assignments you did, this is your score. So now you have that healthy competition spirit because there's also a reward attached to it. And the purpose of the reward is not so that they can work harder. Our idea is to actually just make it fun. And it is actually quite fun. Then that is where we introduced Blue, and we said, you know what, we cannot help everybody. So Blue actually give them a score, which we again put in the entire score and actually help them. And we are also able to track continuously on Blue as well because we have leaderboards. We were able to track the score from the back end and see, how everybody's doing. So fundamentals don't change. Cold calling focus remains for the 4 weeks, irrespective of what we are teaching. The idea is that we grow as we grow in the video game level 0, level 1, level 2, and 3. So as the week progresses, things obviously become hard. In every module we teach, from the day 1, we teach them how to use ChatGPT. Believe it or not, some of them have never used it or have probably used it to like 1% of the capability. I use ChatGPT for like 3 hours a day, I think every day, because of so many different things I keep trying and doing. So whether we are teaching them how to make a cold call script, whether we are teaching them how do you understand your challenges of your prospects, we use, let's say, AI tools. When we are building an ICP, we will teach them tools, how they can build ICP better. We're teaching them how to write email. Of course, we give them access to Blue. We also tell them, okay, if you are able to fetch this information, this is how you can go about it. When we are teaching them how to handle objection, they're creating a script for that. We also, again, use ChatGPT to help them ask better questions. So for everything we do, there's an AI component involved because we want to make that as a habit, that it should not be supplementing it. It should be like an integral part of your training from the day 1. So fundamentals and AI, I think that's for the win.
Absolutely. So I think you training people on AI is the need of the hour, right? Because I think they need to surround themselves with a lot of innovation that is happening, and probably that is the way forward of working as an SDR or a seller overall, right? So like looking ahead, how do you think that AI will continue to evolve, and how the world is changing slowly, right? There are concepts now coming in like like we are building one, right? We are building an AI SDR. So what are your thoughts on that? And will AI SDR and a human SDR collaborate, or will there be only human SDR? There will be a time that SDR roles will be vanishing. Like it's a question which can be hard to answer, but I would
Sure.
love to know your thoughts because it has been around. There are Reddit groups that are talking about that. So would love to know your thought as well because you have been training a lot of SDRs,
Yeah.
and what would be your thoughts on like AI SDRs, human SDRs collaborating together, or
Okay.
how should we as a company as well think about it?
Sure. I think while I've always had strong opinions about what I believe in, I still do. I also am at a point where I see the possibilities of everything is endless. So it'll be futile for us to discard any particular opinion, right? I have seen both sides of AI SDR, right? I've seen founders who have been burnt because their TAM was so small, or they did not know how to operate on it, or they did not, let's say, understand the customer problem, and they started with AI SDR and they kind of got burnt. I've heard like some good success stories as well, where companies are benefiting from it as well. And of course, I see your calendar is filled with it, so I know for a fact it's working. How would the future look like? I think, and I've been talking about this for like a year already. There was a time when we used to think, okay, how would I send 50 quality emails? Then we thought about, okay, how would I send 500 emails? There was always a trade-off, right? And then I think about, and why should there be a trade-off, right? I remember a Rippling CEO's interview once. I believe it was Rippling CEOs or CEOs. And he mentioned the same thing where he said, why would there be a trade-off? So, for example, if I work in your team and I say, Ashutosh, if I deliver this, I will have to compromise on quality. Why? Who said that? There's no rule written anywhere, right? Now, if you think about this, and we have been talking about, one of my predictions for this year was that we will be thinking about quantity of quality and not quantity or quality. There should be no trade-off. Why would there be trade-off, right?
Makes sense.
And if you think about, let's say, and if you break down all the activities which are done today, for example, an SDR, let's say, finds the account. Like you create an ICP, you find the accounts, you find the contacts, you research them, you reach out, you understand your product, you understand their problems, and you combine and basically reach out, right? That's what you're doing. So if you think about, and if some of that can be automated, I would say, why not? And a lot of it can be automated if there's a, and this is where I would say one of my predictions for next year would be the people who would make the most money in the upcoming years would be the one who are able to understand the system and know how to operate that system. So I'll give you an example. I think one of the reasons I think I'm able to churn out a lot of content more than anybody else is because I have figured out the system as to how to listen socially. What are the top resources, top communities where I can listen, I can drive that information using tools like Zapier and whatnot. I know that on an Excel sheet, if I open on a weekday, on a weekend, I know that there will be 10 areas where I can create content, right? So if you
Makes
think
sense. Yep.
about this, for this earlier, I had to find a person who would do this job manually, who may or may not do a good job. But today I can do that at scale. Similarly, I think for AI SDR, like I said, I don't have a strong opinion right now. It's very hard to say whether it will be AI SDR or human SDR. I think it has to be both, right? There has to be a smart human person who would figure out that, you know what, this is not the direction we want to take, and this is the time where we should tweak. Sure. In the future, I can also think about now when I think about the possibility, if a human being can think about if this is not going right, can an AI do that? Once we reach that state, maybe AI can control everything. Now, about the calling part, I am still dicey. I'll not deny it. And I'm not saying this because I have a tool which supports coaching. The reason I support is people don't want to talk to human, right? People talking to AI would take time. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm saying it will just take time. Where
No,
people
makes sense. I think,
adopt to the idea, that it's okay for us to talk to AI.
and even like today, the technology is also like evolving, right? It is not there yet. I think it will take some time to basically get on a call with an AI and we solve all the sales problems probably over the call. Then if the calling part is done, probably video part will also be solved, right?
Yeah, I
So
think video part has been solved to a small extent, right? Where the companies were saying, hey, you record the video once and we'll record the entire video for you. I think I saw Hagen's video recently where what they
right.
have done is instead of me, there could be another person who is actually giving this podcast, and you have different angles, camera angles where you can't figure out not an AI.
I
Uh,
saw the
I think
video recently.
yeah, you saw that, right? So about the calling, I think, of course, there's an uncanny valley, right, in the video part, but in the audio, the way I think about this, and this is exactly what we are trying to do this right now, right? How can we have that experience when you talk to Blue, it doesn't feel like you talk to Blue. In fact, we have 80% plus people who say that I don't feel like I'm talking to an AI. I feel like I'm talking to a human. Of course, as the technology grows, it will be able to interrupt like the way I interrupted you, right? And we can still carry on that conversation, and it doesn't feel like. I have been able to perfect my, clone my voice to a degree where if you don't know me personally, you can't figure it out. It's not my voice. So we have reached that stage. I think it's simply a matter of few months where probably calling will become a norm where
Absolutely.
in my voice, cold calling is happening and, we're booking meetings.
I would love to do that. So, one question, I think this can be a little, so now that AI is, you're already training human SDRs. Are you thinking of training AI SDRs as well?
Can you elaborate on your question, like when you said training AI SDR?
So, even so, from the perspective of you train human SDRs, right? How to sell, how to pick the right ICP, how to pick, let's say, how to call, how to do that stuff, right? All of it, probably, right? End to end. AI SDR is also trying to do the same thing, right? ICPs are picked by the people as of now, right? You prompt it or you fill it or whatever, right? But picking the right person up, doing it and everything, right? Do you think that, okay, will there be a stage that probably Blue or School of SDR will be building APIs of sort and they'll be training AI SDRs as well? Because there will be a lot of AI SDRs, right? A
Yeah.
lot of companies coming in and this is just a quick, I got a question right now, so I
Yeah,
thought
no,
like,
no. I
why
think
not
you're
to
also
ask it?
putting me on the spot. I haven't thought about it. Honestly, I've not thought about it. I do not know if that's a possibility. I did not think in the direction. Maybe. Who knows?
No, this is an interesting concept actually. I just thought ki human are being trained, why not AI, right? Probably, and AI needs more training than a human, right? Uh, cool. It was lovely chatting with you, Rahul, and
Likewise, Asper.
and any last tips probably you want to give to our people who are getting started with the sales career and even in seller community and even your entrepreneurs and sales leader of what any thoughts on how any tips basically, right?
Sure, yeah. I think anybody who is watching this or listening to this, just probably keep one thought in mind that, there's a brighter future out there if you are willing to put in the effort. You cannot be relying on the old tactics and going into the future. You cannot have your one leg hanging in the past and while you're thinking about the future. So if you're thinking about the future, you have to think about what the future will require. Future will require a different skill set. Future will require different knowledge, and that is where I think you should be mad about. You should be reading about. You should be constantly thinking about what can I do where my human effort could be reduced. At the same time, my quality of output is not reduced. And if you're able to think about that, if you're able to constantly keep that thought in the mind, for example, when I go to the gym, every time I'm thinking about, oh, I'm listening to this podcast. And I think after 15 minutes, I realize, oh, you know what? I know where it's going. Can I just get a summary? Can I just skip to the part where it talks about the things I want to hear? And yeah, I think if you think about this, we all do that. Like watch a 45-minute podcast at 1.5x speed, finish this in 20 minutes. But sometimes you feel like, oh, I don't want to do 20 minutes. Is there a way? I always keep finding all these things in my head. So yeah, keep constantly thinking about And I think my last advice for anybody who's in sales today would be adapt, embrace AI as much as you can. Okay. It doesn't have to be about blue. So if you want to try blue, of course, try blue. But I think it should be about, because when I ask salespeople how much of an AI tool you use on a daily basis, most of the time they don't know. Most of the time they don't even know, or they probably consider, oh, I'm using ChatGPT for, all these small things, which is not even 1% of the possibilities. I think the future and the tools and the world is changing at a pace which you can't comprehend. So unless you don't start today, there will come a time when you will see the gap of that understanding will increase. And that is where it'll be harder for you to catch up. So start today, take that action today, spend 30 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever you can devote to it. Yeah, that'll be my advice.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rahul. It was a lovely talk. Thank you for coming on the show. I would love to
Thank you for being a great host.
Yeah, thank you so much. Would love to meet you in person when you're back in India.
Yes.
See you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Bye-bye.
See you in
Bye.
Bangalore. Bye.
Yeah. Late night dreams on the revenue ramp. Talking cash flow and sales stamps. Got Revrag